Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Blind Boone Early Jazz and Ragtime Festival. A big deal day today. We're celebrating Johnny Maddox. Johnny Maddox, Adam Swanson. This is Adam Swanson's event. He's been planning this for quite a while. Johnny Maddox is one of the greatest recording artists of all time. He's sold millions and millions of recordings, most of them back in the 50s and into the 60s. Quite a bit of history, and it's a chance for us to look back with somebody who's been there. I grew up in Alexandria. I work in Alexandria, Virginia, and this is where Johnny Maddox played for a good 15 years or so, and I managed to watch him live repeatedly, and it was quite a show to see. He had his own style, and he would play a tune, and he'd stand up and then tell you about the next tune, and he developed a local audience. Out of that, the Northern Virginia Ragtime Society was started by people that used to just go out and see Johnny Maddox. So we're in for a real treat today, but first we'll bring out Adam Swanson.
Can you hear me? All set. Well, this is great. And thank you for coming this afternoon. I really hope that you enjoy this. I am fascinated by Johnny Maddox, if you did not know. And we'll see how long the presentation goes. I hope it will sustain your interest. Johnny is one of the most important living ragtime pianists. I think it's safe to say that he sold more records than any other ragtime pianist in history. Earned 9 gold singles and sold over 11 million. His star on Hollywood Boulevard was chosen by the original committee for the recording industry when they first built the Walk of Fame in 1960. And his picture hung in the main dining room of the Hollywood Brown Derby restaurant, all because he played ragtime and played it on major television shows, and just spread it to a lot of people for many years. And I'm going to talk to him a lot about his life, career, and especially the other musicians that he worked with, which is really fascinating to me. He worked with all of the big vaudeville stars and ragtime performers from the ragtime era. So, to tell you about it, the man himself, Johnny Maddox. We're not good with technology. You know, wind up the record, that's us. Yeah. Apparently. Oh dear.
Well, we'll just talk about that.
I don't know what I'm doing here. Well, I can't walk over there for every slide.
You just say beep when you want the slide to change.
I was going to ask if someone would come up here and just sit on there and change the slide for me. Beep. Stephen, you'll do a lot of running if you go back there.
I'll get a chair.
Yeah, great. Well, Johnny, I would like you to start by telling us, all these people, please, I want you to tell us all about how you got started playing the piano and your great aunt Zula,
Yes.
Gallatin, Tennessee.
I was born in Gallatin, Tennessee, August the 4th, 1927. And my great aunt was a pianist at the St. Louis World's Fair in 1946 and played ragtime, and this was in the middle of the Depression. I mean, there was nothing really to do. It seemed like a pall hung over my little old town. You couldn't see for the dust. And she started me on the piano. My mother would take me, she would go uptown and do her shopping. My mother would leave me with my great aunt, and she said she could go on with her housework because she knew exactly where I was. Didn't bang after a while, and I started placing my hands on the keys, and that started her to start teaching me music. And then it's 1932 I started, and I studied 19 years of violin, trombone, pipe organ, and piano, and I sound like a cat on the back fence with violin. But anyway, that's the start.
And your great aunt had played with an all-girls band in the St. Louis Fair.
That's right.
And she also played in vaudeville, didn't she?
Yes.
Do you know anything about what she did in vaudeville, where she played? No,
I really don't. No, it's been so long ago.
Well, tell us about, I have some notes here. I know when you were young, your grandmother, my age, they would dance the one-step and all the kinds of things that they did.
Oh, they did the grizzly bear, they did the one-step, they did the turkey trot, yes. They had a phonograph which they would put on a little wagon and haul it around to the neighbors' houses and play these records, and they would dance to them.
You'd go to these parties with them?
Oh, I was way over listen, but that was...
Oh, you're talking about what they did.
Yeah.
This was your family at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
Incidentally, that is Johnny's family on the cover of that album. About 1899.
A cousin of mine said, I knew they were poor as Joe's turkey, but they sure had nice clothes. That's my great-grandfather. He was a Confederate veteran in the Civil War, and my great-grandmother standing down. And I love my aunt that's standing over here with the tree holding up a branch or something. And that was two brothers, but she died in 1940, and I would go up and spend the summers with her about 17 miles away. And I just adored her. She was wonderful.
And speaking of her in that time, next slide.
My grandmother made that shirt for me and put the buttons on the wrong side. You know, like ladies. I remember it very well.
That was about 1937, right?
Yeah, probably.
And 2 years later, Johnny joined a dance band in his hometown. Tell us how that happened.
Well, the gentleman there had played drums with a group called the Bluegrass Serenaders. They were a local dance band that had played back about 1922, 23, along in there. And they played dances around that part of the country. In fact, they were appeared first on when WSM in Nashville, the Grand Ole Opry station, opened in 1925. They were from Gallatin, they were on the radio. And the drummer was a good friend of my father's. And he went to my father and wanted me to play with the dance band. He said, well, I think it'll be all right, but you have to go talk to my mother. She's the matriarch of the family. And my grandmother said, yes, you can have him. Get home by 2 o'clock. No smoking, no drinking, and no cursing. I made up for the last one, but the others, I never drank or smoked. I worked in bars, I saw enough of them to keep me from ever wanted. And because I'm a big sheet music collector, and I figured what putting money into cigarettes and drinks, you know, I could be buying a wonderful piece of music somewhere. So, but I had no interest in it anyway.
And at that, when you started playing with him, you play almost every week for dances with the band.
A couple of three a week, we got $3. In 1939, you got $3 for a 4-hour dance. Played in Tennessee and over in Kentucky.
Well, let's see what's next, Steve. Oh yeah, Johnny's father played the trombone with the local band. That's in the middle right there. John Shepard Maddox Sr. And Johnny is the 6th generation on both sides of his family to live in Gallatin, Tennessee.
Yeah, I left there in 50, came back in 83. If the town was 6,000 population when I left, came back, it was about 28,000. I had to go to the nursing home to see anybody I know, the cemetery.
Next. What do we got here? Ah, Johnny's great aunt Zula, who taught him to play the piano. And Can you tell us anything about those pictures?
Well, her husband was the photographer over in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and that is called she called it a freak photo. Both of those pictures over here, both of those are she. And this was one that her husband made.
On the left, her husband made that too.
Yeah.
That's in the 1890s.
Yes, about 1892, 3, something like that.
And the next slide is an older picture of her. Let's see that.
I just love this picture of her.
I do too.
It's clean not working now.
There she is.
Yeah,
That's kind of what you look like when you know her, wasn't it?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, let's move on to the next slide, and it'll be one. Oh! This is one of Johnny's stories that I think is most incredible. If you know anything about ragtime history, you know who Charles Hunter was? I bet some of you out there do. The great ragtime composer that wrote Tickled to Death, lots of early wonderful rags. And Johnny's piano tuner, when he was a kid, had worked with Charles Hunter. And Charles Hunter died, what, 1907, something like that?
Yeah, in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm, in St. Louis. And so here we have, Steve will take the button again.
Here.
We have Johnny's piano tuner and Charles Hunter on this old advertisement. Guy Francis was his piano tuner when he was a kid. And tell us what he told you about Charles Hunter.
Oh, Charles Hunter went into vaudeville, and there was a funny song that came out about 1904 or 5, something called "Go Easy, Mabel, Go as Easy as You Can." It's about the lady in the hospital giving birth to children and had sex tuplets or something like that. So that was a lot. Go easy, Mabel, go as easy as you can.
Charles Hunter would sing that in the
Yeah.
vaudeville.
He was an albino.
He said both of them were, right?
Yeah, Mr. Francis was too.
Well, you can really tell who Mr. Francis is. That just amazes me.
You play his cotton balls, which I really
Yeah.
like.
And here's one of Johnny's other early piano teachers from Gallatin, who's really fascinating. Prudence Simpson Dresser, Miss Dresser. And she had gone to the New England Conservatory of Music and even once studied with Franz Liszt. And she died when Johnny was only about 11 years old, I believe, but he has lots of memories of her.
You went in on the minute, you came out on the minute, you didn't talk, you didn't say anything, and she didn't like what you were doing. She rapped you across the knuckles with a pencil. I still remember that. Then after she died, I took from a niece of hers. And her niece was Mrs. Neal, and she lived right across the street from my family. And Mrs. Neal told me, she said, Johnny, in the summertime, if you won't go out and play baseball or whatever's going on there, she said, I'll teach you free. And other than that, every lesson was 50 cents a lesson in the 30s.
And she still had a cigar that Liszt had smoked.
Yes, she would proudly show that. They had it in a handkerchief.
And even, as you mentioned, one of your teachers even lived across the street from you.
That's who I just, the last one I was talking about.
Yeah, Ms. Neal.
Yeah.
But you even picked up some tricks from the black piano players who lived on your street.
And over the hill, yes.
Mm-hmm.
They lived in a certain section of the town. I'd go from one house to the other and listen to these black pianists play. And none of them could really read music. They just would sit down and just do blues or whatever. And it was just wonderful.
He still uses some of the same tricks that he did.
Yeah, yes, I do. Like, boom, 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 like that.
What's next? Here's one of Johnny's wonderful teachers. And believe it or not, we have a number of tapes of Miss Leela Donahoe. And Leela was one of Johnny's teachers that he studied with. A little later, he started during the war, didn't you, with her?
Oh, yeah.
And primarily, he learned popular music from Leela. You know, he had the influence on the ragtime from his great aunt, and a lot of popular music from the 20s he learned from Leela Donahoe.
Leela was playing during World War I. I mean, that's how old she was. And she was my popular music teacher. I just adore her. Years later, I went back to see her and took a tape recorder. And I said, Leela, please play something like you did in the 20s. Said people don't play like that anymore. And I couldn't get her to do that blame thing. I was so...
But she was on the radio, right?
She was on the radio.
The good tapes that we have of her.
Yeah.
And now, especially, Johnny really does sound quite a bit like her. Is Chip in that picture, Johnny? I think
Yes.
second from right. hand?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's Tim, who led the dance band that Johnny played with when he was growing up.
We were called the Rhythm Masters.
And the next picture is the Bluegrass Serenaders. That's Leela on the left, and this is the group that Leela played with when they were on the first broadcast of the Grand Ole Opry. Checks in that too?
Right there.
By the drums, yeah, I recognize it. Okay. And I have some more pictures of it.
The lady over here, somebody went out to do a story about for the local newspaper, and that was Stella Cowell, and they asked her, she said, I didn't play that much, I was too young. But there she is, she played violin.
And there's Leela again. I just love that picture of her on the left, looks like a flanker.
Yeah, that's a picture of her, but that's the way I remember her.
Leela Donahoe.
Honey, she could really play.
What, and she played, I believe it was with the Bluegrass Serenaders, right, for silent movies in Gallatin.
Yes, yes.
You told me the name of one of the movies last time.
Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Hunchback of Notre Dame, okay. And the Palace Theater, where she played in Gallatin, is still there, the oldest theater in the state of Tennessee.
1913 it opened.
You used to go see movies there in the
Oh,
30s when
course.
they came out, didn't you?
Oh, Lord.
There's Johnny during the war. He played all during World War II. And I love talking to him about music from World War II because he'll say, oh yeah, about that song when it came out. You know.
I look like a dying calf in a hailstorm.
All right, go ahead. What do we got here? There is Johnny playing with the Rhythm Masters Dance Band. That was probably during the war, wasn't it?
Yeah, if I could see the piece of music on the front of the piano, I could play it.
Yeah.
All these pictures made in the 40s.
Yeah, and a number of these musicians ended up playing with you on most of your early records.
Yes,
didn't
I
they?
did.
Okay, go ahead. Randy Wood is this very important person in Johnny's life. He found Johnny working across the street from him in a J.C. Penney store. Randy had the largest mail order record business in the world in the late 40s in Gallatin, Tennessee, and that's his pile of mail there, record orders. And tell us about going to work for Randy.
Well, I was working at J.C. Penney's, and he had to take a lot of classical record albums to get the popular music, and mostly music that blacks in the lower South would really like, blues. Sister Rosetta Thorpe, if anybody remembers anything about her, but anyway, she was one of the big stars at that. And he started his mail order business house, and then in May the 19th, 1950, he said, I'm going to use you as a guinea pig, we're going to start a record company. So we went out to the local record company, WHIN in Gallatin, Tennessee, had to play on an old acrosonic piano, a little studio, one of those ugly pianos that not even fit for a piece of furniture, but anyway, I had to record on that thing, and I mean, it gave me fits.
Really? When you making your first record?
Yeah.
Good job with that.
Yeah. Randy told me once that I'm hot one minute and cold the next, and that was him. Exactly, that was his. He'd get excited about something, and all of a sudden just cool off. But anyway, he was a wonderful person.
And you worked in his record shop, Philly Waters, for a long time.
Philly Waters, yes, I did.
Here's your next picture. See, there's Johnny working in the record shop.
Yeah.
I would love to just go buy all those records. Next. What do we got? And there's a picture of the record shop. That's about the second location.
That's the
isn't it?
second location.
Okay. Well, you don't have any pictures of the first, do you?
No.
Okay. Well, that's as close as we can get. Next. Well, we're going to play Johnny's first record for you. As he said, he made it May the 19th, 1950.
No, that's
That's crazy, huh?
that's the first record I made. That's it, you're right.
Well, actually, we'll debate that in a minute. This record, a few weeks after it came out, Randy Wood called Johnny and told him it sold 22,000 copies. So here's Crazy Bone. We'll listen to the whole thing. He actually used part of another tune in there. As he said, Randy Wood was hot one minute and cold the next. He said he didn't like the trio of Crazy Bone Rag, so they threw in part of Crab Apples by Percy Winter. And the most important thing is that the composer, Charles L. Johnson, didn't mind. Johnny wrote Charles L. Johnson a letter in November of 1950, and he received a nice reply from Charles L. Johnson a few weeks before he died. And Johnny had asked him for some pointers on how to play ragtime. Charles L. Johnson wrote back and says, "I'm inclined to think you could give me some instead. In my opinion, you know your stuff in that respect." So that meant a lot. That's one of the greatest composers. Charles L. Johnson wrote Jill Pickles' Rag and a lot of other hits.
Kansas City, Missouri.
You haven't heard of it. Next. There's Johnny's first publicity photo taken down in Nashville about 1950. And this is about the time that he hit the road as a touring performing artist. That would have been about when you joined MCA, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think you joined it the first year, 1950.
You know, I don't remember, but I was with MCA for quite a few years.
Music Corporation of America was a booking agency, long ago. But tell me a little more about that first gig you had. You've always said it was your first professional gig. I guess it was through MCA at the Bachelor's Club in Dallas.
Oh, the Office Hotel in Dallas, Texas, yes.
What was that place like? You played there long?
Not played about 2 or 3 weeks, I think.
Okay.
Met Jack Ruby down there, believe it or not. He had a club across the street called I don't remember, but he was a very polite gentleman as well as I remember. And very nice.
All right, next slide. Yes! Bob Seeley, you're going to get a kick out of this. There it is. Well, as I said earlier, I'm going to debate what Johnny's first record really was. Because last year, I was reading part of the book about recording in Nashville in the early days. And there's almost a whole chapter on Johnny in this book. It's called A Shot in the Dark. And Johnny was quoted. He says, "Yeah, I accompanied Big Jeff Bess on Jukebox Boogie." And there it is. I was lucky enough to find it. He made about 4 sides with Big Jeff Bess and the Radio Playboys, which were also on some of the first Dot records. And Big Jeff Bess was married to Tootsie, who started the famous restaurant in Nashville. And we're going to play a little bit of
Step It On Down.
Step It Up and Go.
Step It Up and Go.
Which was later. But you see, Jukebox Boogie is Dot record 1004. Johnny's first record was 1005. So, well, it was released numerically before. Now, whether you recorded it before, I don't know. Wish I could find out. But we'll listen to Step It Up and Go, which was probably made the next year, 1951, when Johnny was 23, something like that. Step It Up and Go.
Well, I had a little girl who was sweet as could be. I loved her, but she left me. I'm gonna step it up and go, yeah, go, I'm gonna go. Well, you can't keep me sitting out of class, gotta step it up and go. I had a little girl and her name was Sue. She left me, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna step it up and go, yeah, go, I'm gonna go. Well, you can't keep me sitting out of class, gotta step it up and go. take me to the gold. Here comes my baby walking down the street. Call my name and it's Johnny Maddox.
How about that? Step it up and go. There we go. There's some more of Johnny's publicity pictures that were used in all the big magazines and newspapers. And when Johnny first went to New York, he had a series of photographs taken by James J. Kriegsman, who was the photographer for everyone in show business going back to the 1930s. And these are just a couple of my favorites. I think there were 5 or 6, maybe a few more that he did that day. And then tell us what you remember about it.
I know he was eating smoked sturgeon when I got that. That's the most smelling mess I ever saw. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. But he was a wonderful photographer.
That was probably about 51, maybe?
Yeah, had to be.
Yeah. Because you didn't really hit the road until after you made that crazy song, did you?
Yeah.
And that was part of the way through 1950, so it was probably 51 when you went to New York, I bet.
Yeah.
Okay, show us the next slide. Okay, well, see, Johnny was just in the right place at the right time to pick up ragtime and early popular music. He got to know the great songwriter Fred Rose down in Nashville. Tell us about meeting Fred Rose.
Yeah, he wrote a lot of the stuff, Hank Williams. He had been a popular song. He wrote a great tune called Honest and Truly, and what else did he write?
Deep Henderson.
Deep Henderson.
Deed I Do.
Underneath Hawaiian Skies, which is a magnificent piece of music. Red Hot Mama, I believe.
Yeah, you wrote that too.
And he came to Nashville and opened up a music publishing business with Roy Acuff. And they published all of Hank Williams' music.
He wrote Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain.
Yes, yes, he did.
So that was, when did you see him down in Nashville? Was it early
In the
50s?
50s, yeah.
Well, he died about 1955.
He had glasses, looked like percolator tops sometimes.
All right. Now, when Johnny first went to New York, that was the first place you played New York, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I haven't shown these to you yet, have I?
No.
I found some postcards from a nightclub that Johnny played in Greenwich Village called the Village Barn. And I figured that postcard may date to the 1930s because that's when it opened. Just tell us about it.
Well, when I started playing ragtime, MCA did not know what to do with me. I was like a dinosaur that had come to life. And nobody was playing ragtime in 1950 except me. And they said, well, we're going to put you down in the Village Barn, let you go down there and try out and see if people like you. And before that, actually, they put me with country western groups. I worked with Ray Price, and I don't know who else, but Carl Smith. And anyway, they put me, I could walk out on stage and play Beer Bar Polka, I could play Red Wing, I could play 5 Foot 2. They knew those, you see, so I was okay with working with country. But I kind of got tired because I don't care much for that type of music.
Show us the next slide here. See, there's just another postcard that I found, and you can see.
That's it.
Is that? Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
It's stuff there. Is that down where you played up there in the?
Right.
Where the band is?
Yeah, right there.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
And they had names of a lot of the stars who played there on the wall. You can see them.
Painted on the wall.
Ted Lewis, a lot of other people. You said Helen Kane was on the wall?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Boo 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 gal.
And a really interesting thing, okay, go ahead one more, is that the songwriter Harry Woods came to meet Johnny at the Village Barn. Harry Woods wrote Side by Side, I'm Looking Over a Four-Leaf Clover, When the Red Red Robin Goes Bob 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 Along, and many others. And tell us about Harry Woods. He wanted you to record his songs.
Yeah, he came down to visit me at the Village Barn. He was a nice fellow. Folks, I'm going to tell you all about nice people. I've met some stinkers in my business, but these are all nice people that I'm going to talk about. except one, and I'll tell you,
We'll get there.
a little bit later on down. But he came down to see me, a nice gentleman, and he wrote, he was seeing his son went to a nightclub, and a big fight broke out, and Harry Wood loved to fight. And he was fighting, and his son told somebody, said, you know, he just wrote a song called Try a Little Tenderness. But he wanted me to, of course, to record some of his songs, which I did.
Over the years, yeah.
Yeah.
But you only saw him that once.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, next. All right. Well, when Johnny went to New York, fairly early on, I'm guessing 51 or 52, he called W.C. Handy's publishing company, which was still running at the time, and got to meet the father of the blues himself. Please tell me every little detail you can about it.
Well, I went to his office, and I said, I want you to show me what tempos you use to play the Memphis blues, Yellow Dog blues, and a few of those old tunes. And I sat down and played, and he said, well, you do it this way, and do it that way, whatever, yes. And he finally said, I think you, what did he say, tell me? He said,
Oh, well, he called Johnny he was the white boy with the colored face.
That's right.
And you spent the whole day with him, didn't you?
I did, went home with him, had dinner with him, yeah.
But you played for him at the office.
I did.
And you don't even know if you played St. Louis blues, but you played everything
I
else.
played Memphis blues for him.
Yeah. You said you even played Joe Turner blues for him?
Yeah, these were early blues tunes, but they were played in ragtime. They played for the two-step dance music. They weren't played slow back in those days like they are. They just had what's called a blue note in the music. Didn't mean slow down. No, they were played pretty fast, really.
You went to a lot of other, the old publishing companies that were around in New York when you first went, didn't you?
Mills Music, I went to Mills.
Yeah. And you met Perry Bradford, who wrote
Perry
Crazy Blues.
Bradford, Crazy Blues, yes.
And he bought a record from Perry Bradford and never sent it to him.
Mew was his nickname.
Yeah. And I'll go ahead and talk about it now since we're talking about New York. When you went to New York, you often stayed with an NCA agent named Bobby Brenner. Tell us about Bobby taking you around to meet stars.
Oh, he and I would go out late at night, maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning before he got back to the hotel. But he was an agent of a lot of people. He, what was the girl's name?
Julie Andrews?
Julie Andrews, a little bitty thing. Cute as she could be, and met her, Donna Michi. I don't know who all.
He took you to see the original cast of Guys and Dolls.
Yes, I did.
You went out for dinner or something after the show?
I did.
And Pat Rooney was in the show?
He was in Guys and Dolls.
Yeah, I thought so.
Pat Rooney, the old
Okay.
time tap dancer.
Let's see what's next. Okay, well,
Oh, boy.
as I had mentioned,
Antiques.
Johnny was really the first successful artist on Dot Records. Dot Records became one of the most major labels of the 1950s and 60s. And for the first 5 years or so of Dot Records, Johnny really carried the label. And I suppose this was the first full-length album he made. Trey Petitioner told me it was the first album of Nothing But Rags. And I believe he was the first person to record Scott Joplin's lead syncopations on this album.
Could be.
Yeah, so I just wanted to show that to you all real quick. That was a 10-inch. That album came out, I have it on a 78 album, 45s, and a 10-inch LP. Next.
It was on 40, yeah, later on.
Oh, here's that. Just a few of his records.
Goodness gracious.
I'm very proud of that. It took me a long time to do it on the computer.
Believe it or not, I don't have any of them, not too many.
I'm only missing about 1 or 2 of his early 78s. I obviously have the recordings, but I want the original 78s, Jukebox Boogie. He made about 4, and then the Dot label changed, and that's what you have probably seen on a lot of the famous Dot records from the 50s. I'm going to play you one that I think is musically the best. And this is a record of Stardust. And Johnny recorded this in Nashville about 1951. And he had a guitar player on the record you may have heard of, Chet Atkins. And this was before Chet Atkins was really famous. He was just a studio musician in Nashville at the time. And of course, Chet Atkins' name is not even on the record.
And smoked a stick in his pipe, I was ever heard.
Really? Well, I think this is really a great record of Stardust. He plays it as sort of a foxtrot like they did originally. So let's listen to Stardust. Saxophone. That was a saxophone player with rhythm master. Johnny was even on sheet music. He was on In the Mood, Ivory Rag by Joe Fingers Carr, and I have another folio that was put out, but I was really happy to find that copy of In the Mood.
Where'd you get it?
Yeah, where'd I get it? Go back. Yeah, we get to see the record slide again. I wanted to tell you a little bit more about his record. You see San Antonio Rose there. We believe that was his first record to sell 1 million copies. But Johnny is such a humble person, uninterested in his own career. I don't even know for sure which of his 9 records were the gold ones.
Oh,
Well, we can guess pretty well. But San Antonio Rose was definitely one, and In the Mood was too. About 2 years ago, going through Johnny's scrapbook, I found a letter from Pee Wee Hunt. And in that letter, he was asking Johnny to be on his TV show because Johnny's big record of In the Mood was at the top of the charts, and I assume he played that on the TV show. And you know, I copied that letter when I was at your house, and it says he was in Louisville, Kentucky.
right.
So that's where he went to be on the TV show.
Pee Wee King.
Pee Wee King, yeah.
He wrote Tennessee Waltz.
Pee Wee King, that's right. And this was 1953, probably one of the first major TV shows Johnny was on. Although he did do some interesting ones in Nashville. He still has the TV scripts for these shows. And, while we're talking about the records, I had a really funny newspaper article to read for you. I'm going to read the whole thing. Y'all remember little Jimmy Dickens from the Grand Ole Opry? Well, he sent this to Johnny. He must have been working in North Carolina or something when he sent this to you. This is an article from the Charlotte Observer, North Carolina, March 19th, 1954. Article column called Life with Travis. I don't know who it was, but it's good. It says McCarthy is not the only thing people get hysterical about. When President Eisenhower was pointing out the other day how hysterical people can get over this McCarthy hullabaloo, he should have been with me Tuesday afternoon and seen a real bang-up case of hysterics. This all started over practically nothing. I had gone into a record shop to replace a record of Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Suite that got busted in an altercation at my house, and there was a stocky, florid-faced man just ahead of me. The clerk, a tall, broad-shouldered guy, had an irritated expression on his face, as if he'd had a tough day, and what this florid-faced man said to him didn't improve his disposition any. "Last night when I was going home in my car," said the florid-faced man, "I turned on the radio and heard the catchiest piano tune I ever heard. I just got to have that record. The announcer said it was by Johnny Maddox, but I forgot the name of it." "My friend," shrugged the clerk, "we have at least 45 records put out by Johnny Maddox. How would I know which one you want?" "Well, name them," said the florid-faced man. "Maybe I'll remember the name when you mention it." "My friend," said the clerk, gritting his teeth, "you may perceive that there are other customers in this shop. I don't have time to name 45 Johnny Maddox records, even if I could remember them all. How did the tune go?" "It went this way," said the florid-faced man. Then he sucked in his breath and started humming, "Rat-a-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat." Brother, that was enough to make Beethoven turn over in his grave. The clerk glared at him and said, "Look here, my friend, that could be anything from the bugle call rag to the charge of the light brigade. A Philadelphia lawyer couldn't figure out what you're trying to hum." "Now look here yourself," shot back the florid-faced man. "Don't you throw off on my humming. I didn't come in here to be insulted. I can hum as good as anybody." "Well, try to whistle it," suggested the clerk. His eyebrows were getting close together, which was a bad sign. The florid-faced man tried to whistle the tune, and that was enough to make a mockingbird drop dead. It sounded like a colony of termites tackling a wooden flute. "Flat brassed," exploded the clerk. "You whistle worse than you hum." The florid-faced man really turned florid. "Flat brassed you, sir," he bellowed. "You apologize to me, or I'll have that record player there over your thick-witted cranium." The clerk realized things had gotten out of hand, and he hastily apologized. Then, with great effort, said, "Perhaps if I play a few records by Johnny Maddox, you'll recognize the one you want. Let's see now, could it be Sioux City Sue?" "I can tell you right off the bat, no," said the florid-faced man. "Name some more before you play any. I told you I'd know the name if you mentioned it." "Maybe it was Crazy Bone Rag," sneered the clerk. "If you start raising me again," bellowed the florid-faced man, "I swear I'll turn this shop upside down with you in it." This scared the daylights out of the clerk, and he began literally screaming names of Johnny Maddox records. "Friday Night Stomp," he screamed. "Hula Blues, St. Louis Pickle, I'm in the Mood and I Ain't Got Nobody." "Stop," hollered the florid-faced man. "I think you hit it. Say those last two over again." As they say about brainwashing, there's a breaking point. This was it for the clerk. He threw up his hands and shouted hysterically, "I'm in the mood and I ain't got nobody." Well, 3 young ladies had just come into the store, and one of them shrieked, "He may be in the mood, but he ain't gonna get me." The way those 3 girls scooted out of the place, I guess they really had hysterics. But no worse than that florid-faced man and the clerk. When I decided it would be safer on the outside, the clerk was tearing his hair, and the florid-faced man reached for the record player with a diabolical look in his eyes. I guess everything turned out all right, because when I looked through the paper the next morning about hysterics, all I saw was McCarthy, McCarthy, McCarthy. I'm so glad little Jimmy Dickens sent that to you.
Yes.
All right, now let's move on. One of the most important performers Johnny worked with at the Baker Hotel in Dallas about 1953 was none other than the last of the Red Hot Mamas, Sophie Tucker. Tell us about it.
Well, she was a tough old bird, I'll tell you. And there was another act that worked with me, and I don't remember who it was, but anyway, they got a big, big hand, and she had them cut that out. She didn't want anything any stronger than what she was doing, so she made whoever the manager of the hotel said they have to lay out. They can't perform while I'm out there. She and I got along just great, because I played a lot of the real old music that she had, she had performed in the early days, so that she and I got along.
Did you play like some of these days for her?
I didn't do that one.
Did what she did that?
I did some other things.
That she did, yeah.
Yeah.
And Johnny met her longtime accompanist, Ted Shapiro, who wrote If I Had You and a number of piano novelties and other things.
Oh yeah, she wasn't singing it till she was just talking off the words to songs. But she was an great old showman, of course.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Aha. Well, one of the really interesting places Johnny played was a nightclub called Baker's Keyboard Lounge, which opened in Detroit about 1934, I believe. And just about a month ago, I had the pleasure of going with Bob Seeley to Baker's Keyboard Lounge. And it's now known as the oldest jazz club in the world. And Johnny met there Pat Flowers, who was on the left. He had been a protege of Fats Waller. Sounded a lot like him and made many records. Was a wonderful stride piano player. And on the right is Dorothy Donegan, another pianist he worked with at Baker's Keyboard Lounge.
She and I do duets sometime together. She was really strictly a modern pianist, but ragtime and modern piano, I don't know. Maybe it's not like Catfight, I don't remember that.
I would have loved to have heard it. And Art Tatum also played at Baker's Keyboard Lounge. He bought them a big Steinway piano. He was known for that. And our friend Bob Seeley, you'll hear about it tonight, I won't make it get up. He saw Johnny play there in the early 50s when he was quite young. All right, enough about that. Next. Aha. This was an important friend of Johnny's. Ragtime pianist from Louisville, Kentucky, Glover Compton. And Glover had been a very good friend of Tony Jackson, who wrote the song Pretty Baby. And Tony Jackson was from New Orleans. I think they played together, toured for almost 15, 20 years. And Glover had been a good friend of King Oliver, Jelly Roll Morton, and many others. So tell us all about meeting Glover, where you were playing.
I was playing a place there on Randolph and Clark Street, I believe, the Theatrical Lounge, and he came in to hear me, and we got to be good buddies. That fella could really put the beer away. I never saw as much beer anybody could drink in all my life. But he was a wonderful pianist. Joe Jordan, another good friend of mine, said Glover was a better pool player than he was a piano player. But I thought he was pretty good, and he played a piece that my buddy over here has learned, Price is Right. It was written about 1900 and was never put down on paper. And Adam, I gave him a set of Glover playing. He's the only one I ever heard play it. And Adam learned it. I told him I wouldn't play it at my funeral and I'd go to the big piano in the sky. But anyway, he and I were big buddies, and I was playing Chicago Theater, and I invited him to come down. He stood in the wings and watched me play at the Chicago Theater.
Well, show him the next slide. I found some, Glover was not a composer, but his name was on one piece of sheet music. Shelton Brooks' Walking the Dog. Shelton Brooks wrote Some of These Days in the Darktown Stearns Ball. And you see Glover's name up there. It was dedicated to him. And Bud Joyner, who was Joe Jordan's vaudeville partner. And you can see there on the picture that Glover signed it for Johnny. I just had to show you that, because I love it. Now we'll go to the next slide. And I was able to obtain some really wonderful pictures of Glover from a famous jazz photographer, Duncan Scheidt. And that's Glover at the piano there with a band at a nightclub in Paris, about 1930. Glover played in Paris for a long time, including at Ada Bricktop Smith's, and which is unfortunate because he didn't make many records. And show him the next picture of Glover up close. And if you want, I will play Price is Right. How does that sound?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
move on.
What's next?
Connie Boswell.
Oh, yes.
The Boswell sisters were a very famous vocal team back in the 1930s. Kind of a precursor to the Andrews sisters. I like Boswell sisters better. And Johnny worked with Connie, who, she was the only one who really went on to have a big solo career, wasn't she?
Yes.
So tell us about working with Connie Boswell.
At the Holland Hotel in Cleveland, Ohio. And she was in a wheelchair. I don't know what was wrong with her. But anyway, we worked Euclid Beach, which was an amusement park outside of Cleveland. And I absolutely just thought she was just the sweetest person I'd ever known. She was wonderful.
Did you see her sing?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
She sang at the Holland Hotel.
The hotel and
And
the
it was there with the Weir brothers who dressed up as chickens. You remember how
Yeah. I looked them up. Okay, well, we'll forget Connie next. Aha! Here's Johnny's name on the marquee of the Olympia Theater in Miami, Florida. It's still there, I believe. It's a gorgeous old theater. And you can see who else is performing with him. Eddie Arnold, Deacon Andy Griffith. And Johnny worked down there a couple times, I think.
Just once. There.
Only once? Okay.
Yeah. That's where I met Colonel Tom Parker. He got later to be Elvis's manager, but he was Eddie Arnold's manager. Heck of a nice guy.
This is where you saw Jane Austen backstage, too,
Yes, I
wasn't it?
did.
Okay.
Well,
Well, I think we have a picture of Johnny on stage at the Olympia Theater. There he is, second from right. That's Andy Griffith next to Johnny. Eddie Arnold in the middle. Can you even recognize Andy Griffith? He's so young. Yeah.
he had a record, made a record called What It Was Football. It was a humorous record that he
And you accompanied him in his act, didn't you?
I did. He did a preaching act. A good man is hard to find. I don't know. Black dialect.
Well, how about that? All right, let's go. Let's see. There we go. On the left is the Duke of Paducah, who is a star on the Grand Ole Opry, and that's Eddie Arnold on the right. Tell us that story about driving around with those two.
We were getting ready to go out for dinner one night. Eddie Arnold was sitting up front with the driver, and the Duke and me sitting on the back seat. And the driver got on the roughest road. Your head was going through the top of the car. And old Duke reached up and touched the driver. He said, "Listen, when you find a hole in the fence, let's get back on the road."
Well, Eddie Arnold became a good friend of yours, didn't he?
Yeah, he came to my wedding when I married. Yeah, big mistake. But anyway.
Well, let's move on. Past that, yeah. Okay, I'll have to tell you briefly the story of Johnny's biggest record, the Crazy Otto Medley, which eventually sold 2 million copies. By today's standards, it should have been a platinum record. I'm going to read you, that's the original German record on the left. It was a cover of a German record. And I'll read you some liner notes from one of his albums quickly, which explains it pretty well. How did a ragtime pianist named Johnny Maddox come to have the first piano record in the industry's history to sell 1 million copies? How did it happen that the record was released under the name of Crazy Otto? Wasn't there another Crazy Otto, a German chap? Which is which? This is a story which is being told here in detail for the first time. The Cleveland disc jockey, Walt Heinrich, was given a German recording by a returning serviceman. The artist on this record was Der Schräg, which can mean the tilted one, or in slang, the drunken one. Walt had many phone calls asking where the record could be bought, and since it was not available in the United States, he mentioned it to his station WERE colleague, Bill Randall. Randall suggested to Randy Wood, president of Dot Records, that it might be a good piece of material for Maddox. Randy agreed, and Johnny Maddox was rechristened Crazy Otto, temporarily. News of this instantaneous smash evidently got back to Germany, because soon Der Schräg, I would say, Schräger himself arrived in this country and recorded again, this time calling himself Happy Otto. On his next release, he succumbed to the mounting confusion and became Crazy Otto, making 2 of them. After the Crazy Otto craze had abated, the instigator of all this record selling became once more good old Johnny Maddox, a name by which he is known to millions of honky-tonk and ragtime fans all over the world, including Der Schräg's home grounds. So that's the story of the Crazy Otto medley. And we're not going to play it by Johnny's request because it's not really a particularly interesting piece of music. But while we're on the topic, I would like to talk about all the major TV shows that this record helped you appear on. I even have the dates. March 18th, 1955, Johnny played on the Jack Parr Show. Tell us about that.
I was there with Edie Adams, and I just adored her. She was so sweet. Who she married to? Ernie Kovacs.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I played the black bottom in the Charleston. She got in the middle floor. She showed could dance, and we got to be very good friends there and on that show. And I really liked her. I didn't get much from Jack Parr, but I liked her a lot.
And as I said, I have the date. It was March 18th, 1955, because Johnny has the script from the TV show, the scrapbook. And it lists what he plays. He played Spaghetti Rag, 12th Street Rag, and Crazy Out. He played quite a bit on that TV show.
Which one?
Jack Parr.
Yeah, okay.
Played quite a bit of ragtime on that show.
I forgot.
In May 1955, Johnny appeared on the Milton Berle Show. Tell us all about that.
Well, it did, but I never thought the show was going to get on the air because he kept changing things around. And I went out on the stage. I think, the name Crazy Out, which I never liked because I think people think you're a comedian, and I'm not as funny as the Burning Orphanage. And I'm just a piano player. I just went out and played, and he had me put on tails, and I had to go out and do this to the tails.
Sad thing is I've never been able to see any of these TV shows. I don't really know whether they exist because at that time they were done on these kinescopes or whatever they are. And there was also an up-and-coming group on that episode of that show with you called Bill Haley and the Comets.
That's right. And the big, what was the record's name?
Rock Around the Clock?
Around the Clock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you told me that you forgot a pair of white socks, so you had to borrow Milton Berle's.
I did. I didn't get a black pair of socks. Couldn't get out and get them. Because the show finally went on.
Yeah. Well, a little bit later, on November 16th, 1956, Johnny played on a TV show which was short-lived. There was only one season of it, starring Patty Page. It was called The Big Record, and all the big recording artists appeared.
Pat Boone was on. I knew Pat Boone when he was in high school, believe it or not. And I came back home and told Randy Wood about this one boy that had this beautiful voice. But he didn't pay attention to me. It took a disc jockey in Nashville to convince Randy Wood to record him.
Who was on The Big Record with you?
Nat King Cole. I loved him. He was just delightful. He said, you and I, let's hang out together. We're from the same part of the country. I think he's from Carolina, so he's his office out there.
And when Johnny was on the show, they had 3 pianos. He played Tea for Two with the famous jazz pianist Hazel Scott and another pianist named Joe Rocco. And I would love to see the show, but I'm not sure whether it exists. There was a little bit of the show on YouTube, an episode with Johnny Ray. It was very interesting.
You wasn't on that show.
No, not with you. Okay. You were on the Soupy Sales show, too.
Yes, in Detroit.
Was that a couple of years later?
Oh, I don't know.
Told me it was 60s, maybe?
Years go by so quick. And the older you get, they really go by.
Did you say Gene Kruger was on the Soupy Sales show?
He was.
You didn't get a pie in
And
your face.
also the guy playing the trumpet was, what was
Trumpet?
Dizzy
Gillespie.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
right. He was on that show.
Next slide. Well, when Johnny's Crazy Out record was #1 in the country, he played at the famous Chicago Theater with the 2 other artists who had the top 3 records in the country. That's Georgia Gibbs in the middle, and Billy Hayes, who sang the Ballad of Davy Crockett.
His record was #1. Mine was #2. Hers, Dance With Me, Henry, I think. That was
Dance With Me, Henry.
Yeah. Henry.
Henry?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's where the ragtime pianist Glover Compton came to see Johnny
That's right.
at the Chicago Theater.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and get him to talk about playing the prestigious Stork Club in New York.
Played it twice. I think that's one of the highlights of my career was playing the Stork Club because it was such a famous club. If they didn't know you on the door, you didn't get in, I know that. Walter Winchell had a booth there. Sherman Billingsley, I sat and talked to him for quite a while, and he said that he made his money in bootlegging and oil in Oklahoma. He got in trouble when he wouldn't serve Josephine Bacon, so that was about the end of the Star Club. But it was a very, very famous place in New York City.
And you were on television there?
Yes, I was. And also on the same deal was Teresa Brewer. She was a delight. Please believe me, she was really sweet.
Was she on both times you were there?
Yes, she was, and so was Gene Nelson, the dancer, as well as I remember.
Were you on TV both times?
Yeah.
Was it both in 1955?
Yeah, must have been, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. And there's Johnny's picture hanging at the Brown Derby restaurant in Hollywood. See, he's right next to Hank Williams, Paul Whiteman down there, Rooney Valley. I think that's Bill Haley, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure the one in the upper left is. This is the only photograph I have of his picture in the Brown Derby restaurant. I wish I knew what happened to it, what I wouldn't give for that picture. And you had lunch in there one time with Candy Candido, a famous comedian.
Well, we had done shows. We traveled around, did fairs. Candy worked for Disney, and he was the Indian chief, Peter Pan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll talk a lot more about Candy in a minute.
Okay.
But tell them about having lunch there, and Pat Buttram.
Yes, he was there.
Pat Buttram was the Mr. Haney on Green Acres.
Sidekick of Gene Autry.
Yeah. All right, go ahead.
Oh.
Okay. Well, March 16th, 1955, Johnny spent the day with the legendary early ragtime banjo player and recording artist Fred Van Epps. And I know that because you wrote the date on the back of the picture. Thank you, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So there's Fred Van Epps. Tell us about it. You said you spent the day with him in Trenton, New Jersey, right?
Yes, I did. And I had just recorded an authentic ragtime album. And in recording that album, Randy Wood would not let me put my foot on the pedal. I had to play it just flat, and everything sounded flat. So Mr. Van Epps called me. He said, "Johnny, why didn't you put some more feeling in that?" I said, "Well, good." I said, "Because he wouldn't let me touch the pedal on the piano." So
And I think Randy did that on a lot of your early records, I can tell.
Well, maybe so, but he said he gave off a wow sound, the piano did. So he
Show us the next picture. It's autographed by Johnny by Fred Van Epps. And these were taken, I think about 1910. These photographs of Fred Van Epps. He was one of the first people to record Maple Leaf Rag. He showed you he had a recording studio of his own?
Yes,
Did he show you around?
He invented something for the Columbia Phonograph Company. I don't know what it was. But
And he developed some kind of new technique in later years for playing the banjo.
he said he changed his technique all the way around, yes.
And he said he made many records under Bess Ostman's name because he was so popular. The Bess Ostman and Fred Van Epps, the two of them were the big banjo recording artists for 20, 30 years. All right, what we got? Band leader Ted Lewis, give your spiel.
This is the stinker. He was very nice to me. I had my little arrangements, ragtime arrangements, and he passed them out to his orchestra. They played them beautifully. He said, "We've got to play these twice again." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, my band plays this for you tonight. These arrangements have to be perfect." So we did them 3 times. That night, the show, there was a guy there it was the automobile show. He was from Circleville, Ohio, right outside of Columbus. And the little girl, singer, was a fellow there from the newspaper and wanted to take a picture of her. And he'd stand in front of her every single time. And finally, she came off the stage crying. I'll never forget that. And the boy dancer, who was a little fellow about that tall, he recorded the whole show. Ted Lewis had a dressing room across the hall. And the boy was playing the tape of the show. Here comes Ted Lewis, burst through the door. Got that little guy practically raised him off the floor. He says, "What are you trying to steal? What are you trying to steal?" Little boy finally straightened up. He said, "Mr. Lewis, I wouldn't have any of this old-fashioned crap." But Ted Lewis made him erase the whole thing.
All right, go ahead. We've got a great here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is sort of a minstrel duo that Johnny worked with. Jam Up and Honey. Honey Wiles had worked with the minstrel man Lassus White back in the 1930s, and they became famous on the Grand Ole Opry. And Johnny played a radio show with them. A live audience, right?
Knoxville, Tennessee.
Knoxville. Okay.
WNOX.
And you accompanied Jam Up singing Pray for the Lights to Go Out.
Right, I did. Yeah.
And then they had a boxing ring or something?
Oh, they had, they put on wrestling matches. Yeah, that was a wrestling match. Over in Johnson City, Tennessee, and I rode over there with them. And they had to have a policeman in the ring because the audience wanted to fight this old East Tennessee, tough country. And a little midget came out of the ring, and a woman stood up and hit him over the head with a purse. And of course, the policeman was right there to protect him. Oh, it was really something else to see those Mountain Dew people.
Well, in Jam Up and Honey were kind of hillbilly. They were on Top Records, too.
Yeah.
Johnny played with Swanson's Thrill Cave for about 4 years, I think. Played on the back of a pickup truck. Piano was lifted 15 feet in the air, and it spun around.
Yeah, had a hydraulic lift that put the stage up in the air. And I was up there playing one night, and the motor that put the thing up there caught on fire. I said, hell, I'm not going to miss a note. I said, if it goes down, I'll go down. But anyway, they put it out. And,
the next picture.
We played 28 states, 1 year, 28 states and 4 Canadian provinces in 18 weeks. A lot of traveling. The minute you got through the show that night, you got in the car and went to the next place.
I think he's the only ragtime piano player who can say he's done that.
We played in front of the grandstand, and if the fairgrounds, where the grandstand was, it was like that. But if you got on one where they had racing, the piano would come up on top of it. I mean, I finally got them to put a safety belt up over my legs. But you know, you look down at the ground, it's way up there. I've done about everything.
There's something we haven't mentioned yet, is that Johnny played in Las Vegas way back in the early 50s when Las Vegas was just starting. And he played a burlesque show out there, Silver Slipper, which is where he met Elvis Presley. Tell us about that.
Oh yeah, Elvis, the first time he was out there, they bought up his contract. He was a failure. But Colonel Tom Parker knew me, so he brought him over to meet me at the Silver Slipper. And Elvis didn't, he was a very polite young man, but he just looked down at the floor when he talked to you. He didn't look you in the face. And he said, you sure play a mean piano? I said, thank you. And the girl going around taking pictures, he said, well, let's go get our pictures made together. And I said, well, I've got to go back to work. So I didn't get my picture made with Elvis. But, you know, I just didn't think anything about it when I knew that they bought up his contract. You know, I just thought, you know, he was just a passing fancy, but well, I sure was wrong there.
There's Johnny when he was working at Mid-South Fair in Memphis, Tennessee, 1956, with a show called The Riverboat Follies. And in that picture next to Johnny is Bobby Gillette, original banjo player with Bix Bob's Wolverines. And in front there, holding Johnny's son, is Candy Candido, the famous comedian. We're going to talk some more about Candy. Let's see what the next picture is. There's Candy Candido. He played the bass with Gene Austin.
Ted Fiorito.
Ted Fiorito, and he danced with Fred Astaire in the movie Roberta. And he did a lot of stuff for Disney, including What Makes the Red Man Red. That's Candy. He could do all sorts of voices. He was on the radio with Jimmy Durante and sang the song I'm Feeling Mighty Low. And Johnny has the greatest stories about him. But you know, we really don't even have time, so let's see what's next. Oh, when Johnny first worked with Candy, they were in a show together with Peg Leg Bates, who was a great dancer. He was on the Ed Sullivan Show many, many times, and his career also went back to the 20s. I think he was in Lou Leslie's Blackbirds. Probably. You can just see in those photographs, he was something. You can look him up on YouTube. Tell us about
well, Candy Candido and I, what was this?
Terre Haute, Indiana.
Terre Haute, Indiana, yeah. We were in the coffee shop at the old hotel having lunch, and Peg came by. I said, Peg, sit down here with us. He said, I don't sit with colored folks. He kept going.
Go ahead. Oh, there's Johnny and Candy on stage together. Isn't that a great picture? Yeah. Oh, was that in the Riverboat Follies? that picture?
I don't remember what
Okay.
I made.
Well, when Johnny was working with Candy in Danville, Illinois, they found out that the legendary performer Gus Van, who was part of the team of Van and Skink, was working nearby, and they went to see Gus Van. And that's an early piece of music there, Ron. I just love those pictures. And Van and Skink were famous for singing For Me and My Gal, and they introduced Ain't We Got Fun. Any other hits? Show us the next picture.
Carolina.
Johnny, tell us the sad story.
Oh, gosh. He had been a big star in the Ziegfeld Follies around 1915, 16, 17, 18, even up in the 20s, he and his partner. And he was playing in some redneck place there in Illinois, and I can't remember the name of the town. It was a gambling place. But anyway, it was like casting pearls before swine, you know, these rednecks. And here's this man comes out dressed exactly like you see him there, with a top hat, gloves, and his cane. Wonderful fellow. But I couldn't stay there and listen to it. I had to get out of there because to me it was just an insult to him. And he said he gambled all his money away, and when his wife died, didn't have enough money left to bury him. So he was out performing again. But Candy said you could hang a line of clothes on his voice. It was, you know, like that. But, oh, yeah, that's my
Tell us about Butterbeans and Susie were an important early black blues and comedy team. And their early records had King Oliver on them, Clarence Williams, and even Louis Armstrong.
And they recorded a tune I really like. Love Me in the World is Mine, Hit Me in the Jail is Yours.
And he met them down in Beaumont, Texas.
Beaumont, Texas.
Did Candy introduce you?
Yeah.
He knew them?
I don't know that he knew them. I don't know. I got over there to meet them. They were on a tent on the fairgrounds.
Let's go. Here's one of my favorite stories. Johnny played a show called The Hillbilly Homecoming in Maryville, Tennessee, July 1957, where he was on the bill with Patsy Cline, and that's the original program. The next slide is the picture of Patsy that was in the program. Tell us about how you like Patsy so much.
I did not know who she was, believe it or not. She just started.
Uh-oh. Yeah, it's falling apart here.
Oh, I thought I felt something dangling down there. Well, anyway, a couple in Maryville, that's a little town outside of Knoxville, close to Oak Ridge.
No.
A couple invited us out for a dinner up in Smoky Mountains, country ham. Country ham is very famous back then, that part of the country, and hot biscuits and red-eye gravy. Well, we get halfway up there. The driver of the car, he runs out of gas. So here we are sitting on the side of the road, Patsy and I just killing ourselves laughing. And finally somebody did come and get us. We never got the country breakfast. And that night I was standing behind her, and it was really hot over there. And she had a big stove. I said, "Gal, you go burn it." She said, "Listen, I just bought it and I'm going to wear it." I love it. I wish I had kept up with her, but I was working all those days.
May or so of 1959, Johnny was playing in Seattle and spent some time with Charlie Winninger, who was a great old character actor. On the left, I found this great big 11 by 14 picture of Charlie. That's the George M. Cohan review of 1916. And Charlie Winninger was the original captain in Showboat. In the musical of 1927, and that is a still from the movie made in 1936 of Showboat.
Yeah, I was playing the Serenaders Hotel in Seattle, Washington, and he would come in to perform with me. He was doing a play called Lightning from the 20s there in Seattle. But he was staying in this Serenaders Hotel, and he'd come up and do songs with me. He could talk them off. He did Life is a Funny Proposition After All, and he did a Curse of an Aching Heart like a drunk would do, and he really was hilarious. We got to be good buddies. And,
Okay, here's one of the albums Johnny's most proud of. Dixieland Blues. He made this in Hollywood in 1959 with many of the greatest traditional jazz musicians who ever lived.
only one left alive on that record.
True. And we're going to play the first cut for you. It is very good and will be for sale out in the lobby. records, but we don't really have time. That is one of the most important ones. He was one of the first people to put piano rolls on records. And that, yeah, go ahead. That's his star on Hollywood Boulevard, which is next to Will Rogers. And the Red Slipper Lounge in Denver, where Johnny played for 17 years at the Cherry Creek Inn, which was his longest engagement.
So many weeks out of the year.
Yeah, go ahead. A band leader from Seattle who was a good friend of Johnny's, Jackie Souters. His father had worked for the Columbia Record Company way back in the 1890s. And Jackie led the band at the Seattle World's Fair. And Johnny inherited a collection, I counted over 600 photographs of vaudeville artists, including some famous ones. Autographed pictures from Jackie's collection. And he has his father's scrapbook about Columbia Record Company in the 1890s. And Jackie introduced Johnny to Harold Weeks, who wrote Hindustan and Chong. He'd come from Hong Kong.
Big Weeks was got to be a Christian Science practitioner.
Yeah, the music shop or something.
Yes, yes.
And here's Johnny playing at Club 76 in Toronto, Canada. He's on the left, Bob Darch in the middle, and an important pianist on the right, Glenn Rowell, who wrote I Get the Blues When It Rains. Did you all three play that at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay. Next. There's Glenn Rowell, and these are some, I'm going to show you some wonderful photographs from Glenn's collection. These are big original prints that I found at Johnny's house. And there's Ford and Glenn. Glenn was part of Ford and Glenn, an early harmony team that were the first to record I'll See You in My Dreams. And these photographs are the original prints and photos that were used on sheet music. And that's Gene and Glenn. Gene Carroll was one of Gene's later partners. They were big stars on the radio in the 1930s. And I believe the next slide should show you some of the many pieces of sheet music on which Glenn appeared and the songs he wrote. That's the original edition of I Get the Blues When It Rains down there.
Dark blue.
Yeah. And there's some more sheet music coming up. That song in the upper right corner that Glenn wrote, Some of Your Sweetness, was recorded by none other than Frank Sinatra. And we'll move on. I was going to play you a recording of Glenn, but we've got to skip that. And there's the album that Johnny made of piano duets with Glenn. They played in clubs in Toronto, Denver, and even the Bahamas together. Go ahead. And there's a wonderful song called On a Circular Staircase. I've been playing it here this weekend. I'll tell you what, I'll play it tonight. That Glenn wrote in the 40s. It's almost like a novelty piano solo. Go ahead. Aha. Now, we get to talk about Joe Jordan, who was one of the most important early ragtime composers. He had been a friend of Scott Joplin's and was most famous for writing that Tease and Rag in 1909, and in 1910, the song that made Fanny Bryce famous, Lovey Joe. How did you meet Joe? You were just playing in Tacoma and realized he was living there?
I was working for the Bon Marché department store in Tacoma, and of course I knew he lived there, so I looked him up. But he was the turnkey at the jail in Tacoma, Washington.
Next picture is Joe Jordan and his Memphis Students, which someone once said they were the first jazz band to play on the New York stage. See him in the middle. This is a photograph that he gave Johnny of his band. It was taken about 1906. Go ahead. And here's some photographs of Joe Jordan and his vaudeville partner, Alvin Joyner. You might recognize the photo on the left was used in the book, They All Played Ragtime. What's next? And there's a photo of Johnny and Joe Jordan together at one of Bob Darch's gigs. That's the only photo I have of them together. And there's Johnny, where he played at Il Porto restaurant in Alexandria, Virginia. Played there for 16 years. And he retired about 1992. There we are. We met at the Diamond Bell Saloon in Durango, Colorado at the Strater Hotel. He played at the Diamond Bell for 16 years. And just retired last fall. That's the album we did together. And why don't we close out by playing Corsica for everybody? How does that sound?
All right to me.
This is a song written by Johnny's friend Joe Jordan that was never published. wrote it in about 1909, a gorgeous song called Corsica. And he learned it from Joe, and I learned it from him. Here we go. This will work.
We can get on both of us on that.
I'm pretty sure.
Ooh, it's often to get old. B flat.
I've got the pedal here.
You gonna work the pedal?
Yeah, I've got it.
You gonna work the levers?
Johnny Maddox and Swanson. We have a tribute concert to Johnny Maddox tonight. It's a big deal. Tickets available out front. There's some new forms that have just come out. This is very